Some of the signs, so for parents, we just talk about behaviors. That's all we want them to do, because we want them to reframe behaviors. For you three, we talk about, so we do training in much more subtle signs. So we look at skin color, pupil dilation, we look at movement, tone of voice. So we have, all of this is called body reading, and it's the new kind of therapy in the US. The best person on body reading is Pat Ogden, O-G-D-E-N, sensory motor psychotherapy. Okay, so for clinical purposes, you would want to be more sophisticated. But for mom and dad, we don't need to go there. We don't need to teach mom and dad to look at the pupil to figure out, or posture. You can tell by posture, you can tell when a child is overstressed. You can tell by facial expressions and so on and so on. Okay, so now we've got them now starting to reframe their child's behavior. Now they need to become, or you need to become, a detective. Step 2 is, what are the stressors? What's this kid's stressors? And the problem here is that people think of stress as psychosocial. Okay, so you say, well, we have research that tells us that children today are the most stressed generation that we've ever seen. About 5 times the level of stress at the height of the Great Depression. It's a very interesting study that was done. So you say that, and so the typical response is, oh yeah, well, you know, they're trying to do too much, they're overscheduled, or whatever. Yeah, those are stressors, there's no doubt about it. But they don't really apply to your kids. They don't apply to low socioeconomic kids. What are the stressors? We know that the stress on children is highest, absolute highest in low-income areas. So what are the stresses? Okay, so let's just back up, because you're going to answer this one. So let's back up one sec. What is a stress? What's a stress? What is stress? Physically, what is it? Everybody talks about it. Define it. What the hell's a stressor? Do you know? We all use the term.
Extreme worry, maybe.
No, that is certainly a consequence of stress. Extreme worry is a consequence, and you're right. I mean, it's a stressor in its own right. Huh? So for scientists, what we want to know is, tell me something where I can measure it. Tell me where I can, I want to know literally, physically, what the hell's going on here. Okay, so I'll tell you what the classic definition of stress is. The classic definition of stress was worked out in the 20th century, and then it got distorted by American media. A stress is anything that requires the brain to burn energy. That's a stressor. And some burning is good. Some stress is very beneficial for the child. Education is stressful. It's good, provided it doesn't go crazy. So stress is anything that causes that orange brain to trigger a release of adrenaline to meet the challenge or the threat. That's a stress. Okay? So now what we're really interested in is what's causing the kid. So if I tell you that, I can tell you right now, I don't have to read any studies. I can tell you that 100% of the kids that you guys are working with are overstressed. Okay? I know it. There's no doubt in my mind. So what are their stressors?
The stressors are in, for example, the stressors are in their family.
Okay, so we've got family stress. I like it. That's a big one. Yep.
Education.
Somebody's got to translate for him for me. Somebody translate.
I think stress is a continually consequence.
Example. Tell me one example.
pas mendimi tim stresi është prezent tek fëmijët
Stress is present to the children
në mes të kërkesës dhe mungesës që ata e kanë.
between the request and the need. And
Okay, so demands. So demands are good. Okay. If I tell you, how many of you are working with children with autism? Just 3, 4. Okay. So 5. Suppose I have, a lot of you. Okay. So I'm working now with a kid with autism. Okay? And I bring him into this room. I have him sitting right here beside me. What would happen to him? Why? What's stressing him here? Hey, sit here beside me. I do this for a living. We work with autistic kids. Okay, he's sitting right beside me. And odds are he would have been shrieking 10 minutes ago. Why? Okay, that's a good one. The people, crowds, yep.
Please, help me.
Yeah, help her.
Translate. Sve ono što nije u skladu
everything what is not in
sa zadovoljavanjem dječjih potreba
to satisfy the children needs. Anything what is not in line with satisfying the children needs.
So is she thinking here about like change and stuff like
što
that?
je nametnuto,
Which is
nagle promjene, ono što je nametnuto, visoki zahtjevi,
high requirements from the children, which is forced, something is forced to him to do, but he doesn't want to do.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Now, but you say you work with autistic, yeah?
what?
She works with autism?
Radite sa autističnim djecom? Radite sa
No.
autizam?
No.
No.
Okay, so stay autism for just 2 seconds. What about this room is going to overstress that child? Think about this room. Yep.
big, different.
Okay, big, different. What kind of noise?
High noises.
Good one. Yeah. This would have sent him off a long time ago. That is a stressor. In fact, the number one stressor on children in school is noise. Okay, what else would send him off? Noise. Good one. We don't think of that as a stressor, do we?
New environment.
Okay, new environment, strange environment. That was her point. What else? Yep.
Promjena.
Možda mu sjedite previše blizu.
Somebody
Ono se
translate.
poznaje.
You are sitting very close to him.
Good one.
He doesn't-
Good one. Proximity. Really good one. What else? Is he going to like the light in here?
Ne poznajem ga.
No. The light is a stressor for him. What about, one of you has got some,
Boje različite u prostoru.
what did she say?
The different color in the...
Good one. Good one, good one, good one. That's such a good one. Because we know, no, seriously, when we work with autistic children, we know, don't give him something like this. It's got to be, it has to be plain, beige. But guess what? We took all this into these classrooms of First Nations. So we walk into a classroom and the teacher's got all this crap on the wall. So, because that's what teachers like to do. And it looks colorful, and she's got mobiles, and she's got wall stuff. But these are children that are in highly traumatized environments. The visual, it's called visual noise. That's the technical. The visual noise was a huge stressor. So what we did when we came in was we got rid of all the crap. And we have all the walls are beige. Then what we do is there are some children that need a little bit more stimulation. They need this. Not all kids are like autistic. Some of them need that. So in one corner of the room, we'll have a lot of color, a mobile. So what we do is we create micro environments. We create an environment where, okay, I'll tell you how you do it. So, if I'm working, say, in a classroom or a daycare environment, I'm going to have one area where I'm going to have a little rug. I'm going to have a beanbag chair. Beanbag chair, that makes sense in Serbian? Because what happens is the child sinks into it, and it gives him what's called proprioceptive stimulation. It calms his nervous system down. So I'm going to put him in there, and I'm going to have, it's going to be no colors. It's going to be a very calm, soothing environment. And that will be wonderful for some children. Not all children, because all children are different. So I'm going to have another part of the room. And this part of the room is going to have some mobiles, and it's going to have color, and maybe it's going to have something like, I use exercise balls. Exercise ball? So you can bounce, bounce, bounce. So what I want to do is I'm going to have a number of different micro environments in the classroom or in the room. Now what I want to say to mom and dad is, I want to explain to them what you just did. I want to tell them that, you know what? I think that your kid is very sensitive to noise. So that when they're shouting, or when the TV's on all the time, these are stressors for him. So you got to turn the damn thing off. Or we have to find some place in the home, where it's quiet. Suppose they're poor. Suppose they're really, really poor. So they don't have these options. Suppose they don't have a home where, like, if it's a nice, wealthy home, then what I can do is I can create the child has his own bedroom, and then we can create an environment suited to that child's need. What they will find is that when this is possible, that child, you get a different child because he'll go into the room when he needs to calm down. But when I work in First Nations, this is basically a one-room home. This is not the 1,000 meter square home. This is small, where we're all, this corner is the kitchen and this. So now, but I know that this kid is very, very sensitive to noise. I know that noise is stressing him out. What can they do? Is there anything they can do to give him that quiet? What can they do? Yeah. So when we go into, I always carry these with me. That'd be the one time I haven't carried them. Ah, dear. Oh, it's in my jacket.
Earplug.
Yes.
You are looking for earplug.
Yes. So when we do home visits, so when I'm going around to homes, I always have a box of these. That I can afford. And it works. It works. And what we want the child to do is put it in when you need it, take it out when you don't. Okay?
You should tell people what it is.
This is
Fancy earplug.
these are earplugs. It's as simple as that. And it works. So what they need to do as parents is they figured out from step one, they figured out, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm tired too. So from step one, they figured out that the kid is overstressed. From step two now, we're going to start to figure out what the stressors are. I'll tell you a story. When you're trying to figure out the stressors, it's unbelievable how subtle they can be. It's unbelievable how sometimes something is a stress that you never even dream was a stress. So we had a kid, And he was 16 years old. And the family came in to see us. They came to clinic because it was Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving in Canada is a very big holiday. And grandmother came for Thanksgiving, and they'd made a big fancy dinner, and the kid jumped up from the table and wouldn't sit. So the parents got very upset. They thought that the kid was rejecting his grandmother, nice old lady. And grandmother's upset, everybody's upset. Okay, and so now what had happened was everybody was excited about it's like Christmas, right? Everybody gets excited, and then it turns into a disaster. So the family were from a small town, and they had driven into Toronto 2 hours to come and see us. So the kid, he starts talking. Oh, so we say to the kid, so I say to the kid, so what'd you guys do last night? And he gets all excited. He says, oh, we went to Kelsey's. So Kelsey's is a popular steak restaurant chain in Canada and the US. So he says, oh, we went to Kelsey's as a treat. This is a poor family. So, and then he gets a very wistful, sad look on his face. So I said, how come you look sad all of a sudden? Didn't you like Kelsey's? He said, yeah, I really wanted a steak, but I had he said, oh, I really wanted a steak, but I didn't have it. So I said, oh, what'd you have? He said, oh, I had a hamburger. I said, well, if you really wanted the steak. And he said, oh, and the steaks look so good. So I said, if you really wanted a steak, why didn't you get the steak? And he looks at me like I'm a total idiot. And he says, you know. So I'm there thinking, what's he trying to tell me? And then the penny dropped. I said, yeah. It's a good one, eh? So he didn't like the cutlery. He didn't like the knife and fork on the plate. To him, that was like if I dragged my fingernails on a blackboard. So I said to him, wait a sec. Is that why you left the table when your grandmother was there? Well, yeah. So wait a sec. You left? I said, would you have stayed there if you had hamburgers? Yeah. I always stay when Mom serves hamburgers. So I said, why didn't you? And Mom's looking at this, and she's like, oh my God. So I said to him, why didn't you tell Mom and Dad? He said, well, I thought they knew. So here was a family. This kid was 16. So for 15 years or 10 years, the kid's been running from the table because everybody else is using knife and forks. And they thought it was because he didn't like them. They thought it was because he was rejecting them. But it wasn't. So when we work on this, it's quite astonishing. Like, we have no end of these. Things that turn out to be a stressor that we would... A kid that got stressed out because they had a fridge that made a noise when it went on. Like little things that you just don't think, okay? So when we talk about stage 2, and one of the things that we want them to do, ask the child. Ask him. I can't ask him, he's a kid. Of course you can ask him. And what's astonishing is we do this with 3-year-olds on the spectrum. They can tell you, if you ask them. Now, when the parent asks them, you have to ask them in a way that is commensurate with the child's abilities. You can't ask them to use words that they don't know yet. You can't say to a kid, you can't say to any of the kids you're working with, how did you feel? None of them can answer that. No kid can. How do you feel? Fine? So what were you feeling when you were beating the crap out of your sister? Nothing. She started it. Okay, so now what we have to do is when Mom and Dad are going to ask them, see, this is the part of the modeling that Maria was talking about, right? So now what we want to do is we want to help them develop the language where there is genuine communication. So kids, little guys, do not have the ability to put their feelings into words. They don't have that. But what they can do is describe their body. That's what they can do. So, what did you feel in your stomach? What did you feel in your arms? How did your head feel? Everything, body stuff they can answer. with little guys, what we want them to learn is we need them to learn when they're stressed, when they're calm. That's where we're going with all this. So what we may have to do is use dolls to help them communicate. Typically what we will do, if, let's say we're looking at children, roughly speaking, in this 0 to 6 age, well, I mean, realistically 3 to 6. We give them a Raggedy Ann doll and a Buzz Lightyear doll. Do you have Buzz Lightyear in Serbia? Yeah. So,
I mean, everywhere I use.
okay, so Buzz Lightyear, you know, like the wooden guy, you know, like, so we say, we hold up Raggedy Ann and Buzz, and we say, do you feel like Raggedy Ann or do you feel like Buzz? That they can do. Now, okay, now, does this smell make you feel like Raggedy Ann? Because a lot of kids have, you know, parents get so impatient, the child won't eat this. But have you ever eaten something like a durian? Do you know what durian fruit is? Or Limburger cheese? You like that? Did you get past the smell? Okay, I can't either. Well, that's what it's like for some children. For some children, that smell, because they have very sensitive responses to smell, it triggers a gag response. But we get angry. What do you mean you're not going to eat it? Eat your Brussels sprout. But in fact, it smells so strong to them. Or it can be texture. Texture can be the stressor. They don't like the taste, they don't like little bits of mashed potato. But the parent doesn't understand all this. And so what we want to help the parent, the way we can help the parent understand all this is we always try to relate it to themselves. So I'll give you a classic example. I had a family we were working with where the mom and dad were telling, the child had very, very strong reaction to smell. And it pissed the hell out of the mom. So, because she saw it as he was being willfully disobedient. He wouldn't eat what was put in front of him, and we don't have a lot of money, and he'll bloody well eat what we eat. But in the same breath, the dad told me how the wife made him nuts because she couldn't go into a restaurant where the cigarette smell was too strong. And so they would go from restaurant to restaurant. So what we do when we work with mom and dad is we always try to help them understand in their own life. And usually if the child has a certain sensitivity, the odds are one of the parents does. Okay. So what we're going to do when we're trying to identify the stressors is we're going to try to involve the child in this conversation, and we're going to try to have the conversation in a way that actually involves mom and dad personally. We always try to personalize it so that they start to see themselves and not just this creature that is being disobedient. Okay? And then the third step is reduce the bloody stressors. Okay, so I got a kid, we use this trick all the time. So every school that I go into, I know I'm going to have a certain number a certain percentage of traumatized kids are very, very sensitive to light, to bright light. Okay? So bright light is a stressor. Just the way your example of the different colors are a stressor, bright light is a stressor. Okay, so I go into a classroom, and I know that I'm going to have, out of 25 kids, 5 of them are going to be very sensitive to light. What can I possibly do to help them? Bearing in mind, I don't have money here. It's not a hard one. Take the bloody light bulbs out of a corner. That's all you got to do. There's simple solutions here once we start thinking about this. We don't need money for this. We just need to think. So when we talk about the best way of understanding reducing the stressors is think about, you know those little switches on a light where you can dial it down, the rheostat switch? That's what we mean by reducing the stressors, slowly turning down the dial, whether it's noise, maybe. Okay, here's another one. A family comes in to see us, and they have a little guy. So he's like, he was about 3. And every time, it was an Italian family, and every time grandma came, the kid goes nuts. Okay, like he can't stand grandma. And this is tearing grandma up. She's Italian. She needs to hug the no-no. So, anyway, so so I knew right away what the problem was. I could tell right, just like that. But now the problem is, the psychiatrist is, how do you tell her? So, I'm very gentle, and I said, well, maybe, and she says, look, she says, doctor, I have 4,000 grandchildren. I know how to raise grandchildren. And I've always done the same thing. And I said, yeah, but, the other 3,099 didn't have what he has. And what he needs to do, and the problem was, she was in his face. She was too much gestures, too loud, and so she needed to soften and back off. And as soon as she started to do that, of course, then the kid's just trying to protect himself from what he saw. And so we need mom and dad to understand this too. Read those signs, number one, in terms of what you're doing. Maybe what you need to do is, yeah. Or pick it up.
Big Deci for you? Yes.
Both. Okay. Okay, step 4. Is that okay for 3? So you got the idea? 4, the kid's got to develop self-awareness. And what does that mean? The child has to know what it feels like to be calm. And again, I would bet anything that none of your kids do. Typically, they don't. Their life is so stressful, and it's the stress of, the parents have so much stress, and the stress of poor neighborhoods, and the stress of smells. Just, the child's never been calm. The child doesn't know what calm is. So this is interesting for us, because how are we going to get a child to understand what calm is? To know when he's calm, to know when he's agitated. He cannot self-regulate till he knows this. So the typical response is it's what's called metacognitive. And what that means is you say to the child, calm down. Okay, it's a joke, right? So has it ever worked? I mean, if you say it loud enough, he'll get scared. So, but how do you teach a child who's always up here? How do you teach him? So the first thing we have to do is we have to get him calm, right? So we have to figure out how to get him calm. So we have certain tricks that we use. One of the things that I love is something called a tickler. This seems to work on almost every child. It looks like an egg whisk, and you put it on their head like this. Do you know what I'm talking about? It costs about $5. So it has wires that come like this, and a little handle, and you put it on the head, and the things spread out. It gives a head massage. Children adore this. It's very cheap, and it's very, very effective. There are other ways, but I like this one the most. So what we want to do is, the first thing we want to do is we want to give mom, who's never had this calm child, we want her to see that she has it within, that there are ways for her to calm the kid. Okay, and we'll figure out different ways. If the tickler doesn't work, we'll find something else. When the child is calm, there are 3 things that have to happen. In order to know in order to be aware of calm, there are 3 pieces, not 1. Calm is not the same as quiet. So parents confuse this all the time. I can get a child quiet, but that doesn't mean he's calm. I can sit a child on the timeout chair, and he doesn't make a sound, but inside he's boiling over. So we need them to understand that there's a big difference between calmness and quiet. So what is calmness? 1, the muscles are loose. 2, the child enjoys having loose muscles. Come back to that 1 second. And 3, the child knows when these muscles are loose. The child knows when he's in this state. Now, the reason I wanted to come back to 2 is, if a kid is really up here, and you bring him down, you try to bring him down, he won't like it. They are so used to being up here that they find it unpleasant, aversive to bring them down. So what we need to do, you understand what I'm saying, yeah? So when we bring them down, what we do is, it's called titrating. Titrating? It means you bring him down very, very slowly. If you go too far, too fast, he will hate it. So these are children that have found a million ways to keep themselves hyper, to keep that adrenaline going. What we're doing when we bring them down is we're turning off the adrenaline. That's what we're doing. But if I go too fast, he'll rebel. We used to do this exercise. We used to do what's called progressive relaxation when we do, so we would do it with large groups when we're doing our training. And then at the, so you know how you do progressive relaxation. Okay, so I need you to all, here's a real interesting way I'll show you real quickly how to do it. So what I want you all to do right now, this is late in the day. So I can tell you right now, everybody in this room is very tense. You have to be. You're concentrating on me. It's not a great room. It's late. You're tired. You're probably hungry. You've got tension written all over your face. Seriously. Because you're concentrating. Concentration requires tension. We know now that when we concentrate, it's a whole body phenomenon. Okay, so just do this for me, okay? All you're going to do is when I tell you to, it's going to be a little hard because it's not the greatest room. You're going to close your eyes and concentrate on relaxing the muscles in your cheeks on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Let all the tension go out of your cheeks. Okay, now move down your face, down to your shoulders, and let all the tension out of your neck. Let your neck relax and let your shoulders drop. Okay, don't go too far, you'll fall asleep. Now, is there anybody in the room that didn't have that sensation of the muscles relaxing? You all have it. Good. You should, because it tells me you're concentrating. Now, when we do sensation, we do it carefully and we do it for a while. I always have at least a couple of people that we're training that freak out. These are clinicians, and they freak out. Because clinical work is very hard work. And they take it seriously, and they work too high. And so they have got themselves in this state of chronic tension. And because I went too far too fast, it freaks them out. It's unpleasant. They hate it. So we can do the same with the kid, right? So what we have to do with the child is nice and slow, nice and gentle. And if I see, we have these programs they brought into Canada now. So one of them is you're going to get a kid to do breathing, focused breathing for 15 minutes. So you all work with little guys. How good are they going to do at focused breathing for 15 minutes?
It's too much.
It's ridiculous.
They don't have attention to stay 15 minutes.
I don't know if they have attention to stay for 15 seconds. So, but I can get the same effect. So what she says is too much, right? Is way too much. But I can get the same effect other ways. I don't have to have, I can slowly calm them down just by, I don't know. Well, actually, I'll show you. So we use various tricks. So this is a good trick. So we have lots of, we use lots of apps on our, this one. So let's do this. That'll do it. But what you have to do for that costs $4. But for that to work, what you have to do with the kid is, the program we use has 30 sounds. And so we say to the child, we'll put on earphones, we say, find the sound that you like. So this is the kid's favorite sound. We've had... I can't explain that one. Okay? But it is. So, but what happens is, so I don't know if they all like it, not all of them, but some of them will choose what I would choose. But the point is that the exercise of having to choose focuses them. So that works on its own. And then they find the sound. And whether the sound works or not, maybe it's just my suggestion. Because what I'm telling them is, you know, there's a sound for you, and the suggestion is so strong that they, oh yeah, the cow works for me. And maybe partly what it is, you know, trying to shock the doctor. So at the end of the day, what we've learned is it's very difficult to get the child to develop self-awareness if the parents don't. Okay? It's very hard. So what we need to do is we need to always be thinking, if we're working with families, of what kinds of things can we do to be developing self-awareness in mom and dad or mom alone, whatever it is, as well as in the kid. So we see this as a systems work, not as just, okay? Because I don't remember who said it. I think maybe Josh said it, but we're working on the relationship. That's really what we're working on here. Okay, and then the fifth step's the easiest one. And the fifth step is, okay, now when you're so now the kid knows when he's getting agitated, and I told you, you can do this with very, very young children. So the kid, so the kid knows he's getting agitated. Okay, what brings you back? And the secret here is, there is no recipe. There's no cookbook here. There's no, this is what works. So I have lots of techniques. So I just showed you, okay? So I'm going to use sleep sounds. But I'm going to have, that doesn't mean it's going to work with every kid. So one kid, it's going to be, okay, so we had this, you know what, I'll save that for tomorrow. I want to do the next level of when you try to institutionalize this. The point is that learning what works is a trial and error process. For one kid, it might be going for a run. For another kid, it might be sitting in the dark. For one kid, it might be listening to music that you and I might hate. For another kid, it might be listening to nothing. So we learn, and what we want the child, the greatest gift we can give the kid is if the kid knows when he's starting to get agitated, and he knows that if I go for a run now, I will feel much better. So, but we have to, it has to be like over and over again. I've had, you know, when we train therapists, so we get a lot of therapists that are runners. And because they are so addicted to running, they are convinced that running is the solution for dealing with stress and anxiety. But it's their solution. And so I can have another kid who absolutely hates running. And what that kid wants to do is yoga. But my runner therapist doesn't want to do yoga because they don't like yoga. It's too quiet, it's too stationary. So what we have to do is we have to, and the same is going to be true for mom and dad, or mom or whoever it is. It's not what you like, it's what the child likes. It's what the child finds calming. And so together, this has to be a co-discovery of what works for him. Because then what happens is you just gave that kid, look, you know he's growing up at a time when stress is going to just get worse and worse. So the best thing we can give him is if we can give him, okay, I'll make this, I'll make this the last thing. Then if you want to ask questions, you can ask. Otherwise, I'm going to sleep. We want to give him adaptive coping strategies so that he doesn't pursue maladaptive coping strategies. And the maladaptive coping strategy could be, it could be junk food, it could be, as he gets older, alcohol, drugs, it could be promiscuous sex, it could be ridiculously risky behaviors. Those are all maladaptive behaviors. So what we want to do is so what's the definition of maladaptive behavior? Maladaptive coping strategy. It means that, yes, okay, so look, junk food works, chocolate, all that stuff, it works, it's great. It has a very calming effect, which we can explain in terms of the brain. The problem is that it has obesity as a side effect. It has a bad side effect. The problem with drugs, I mean, you hear these guys. I have a buddy who wrote a book about it. He's a drug addict and became a neuroscientist. And if you have the money, drugs actually work. They will regulate you. Unfortunately, they have side effects, and they're pretty serious ones. So all of the maladaptive coping strategies have very bad side effects. But on the other hand, there are adaptive coping strategies which have not only no side effects, but exercise is a really good adaptive coping strategy. It has a lot of benefits other than just, so for example, exercise, I'll give you a couple of examples that we've looked at. Exercise, music, yoga, and martial arts. And what the research tells us is not only does it calm the child, but we get much higher scores of well-being, we get better academic outcomes. So that's what we're looking for. We want to give him that arsenal of things that work for him so that he enjoys life. I loved what you said when you said that. So that's what this is all about. What this is all about is we want to give them a life where they enjoy being alive. That's their right. Remember she had that? It was like her third slide. This is their right. And so now what we're trying to do is we learned something very interesting. Our clinic, we've done this for a long time. We have been 100% successful. We have been successful with every single child. Okay? So that's extraordinary because we work with everything from low functioning autism to extreme ADHD. So how can I say that? How can I say that we've been successful with every kid? Well, the question you should be asking is, Shanker, what's your criterion of success? Our criterion of success is that the kid's happy. That's our criterion. The other stuff we don't care about. So what we are working on is that's why I told you the story this afternoon about the little guy who smiled, why I was so moved. But what we have discovered is that when he gets happy, a whole lot of good things start to happen in his life. But we're not looking for those. We're not advertising that if you do this, this is one of the other problems, Maria, with government demands, right? So what they're focused on are these ridiculous literacy and numeracy scores, as if that could measure the success of education. The success of education is that the child is happy and healthy. That's a success. And then you get your other stuff. The research actually tells us that you do. And in fact, the research tells us that you can get those high literacy, numeracy, everybody's talking about the Asian miracle. I have the South Korean government begging us to come because the kids have a huge mental health crisis. We don't want to go there. So, I look at your country and I think such a long history of really horrible stuff, right? But you can turn it around. You can turn it around right away. It's doable. Then you have to believe that, and you have to get everybody else to believe it too. I know it is. I've seen it. I've seen it over and over. I've seen things happen that people told me were impossible. Well, they were wrong. It's always possible. In fact, I've done this so long, I've seen, I don't know, we've tried to work this out. I've seen upwards of 5,000 children over the span of my career. Do you know I've never once seen a bad kid? Never. There isn't such a thing. There really isn't such a thing. Do the wrong things and you'll make them bad. But he's just a kid. Okay? So that's the sort of, that's looking at strategies from 3,000 feet in the air. And then tomorrow what I'll try to do when I do strategies is I'll try to do much more focused, literally what do we do? Right? So what are the actual things I can do day to day? What are the sorts of techniques that I can start to experiment with? How do I do things like a classroom makeover? How do I work on emotions? Okay, but I want to stop now because I'm too tired. Can I stop? Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you means I can stop.